Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, January 4th. Happy New Year, everyone. We are privileged to be meeting on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, Hatsqualowin, Queeslukmuk, Laskahopmish, Okamayo. Motion to adopt the agenda, Council. Moved by Council Herford, second by Council French. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any notice of motion? Seeing none, we do have one delegation this evening, and I'm going to have Councillor Pettengill introduce Lucy Gill, our guest.
Yes, thanks. I'll do a little brief introduction and ask Ms. Gill to fill out the information. But I've seen Lucy perform at Ampton Park for a number of years and just watch with a fair bit of jealousy at how quickly she's grown in all the instruments she plays. Her voice as well, it's just incredible. And went to see a performance, the Howe Sound Performing Arts, couple months ago now, where she was doing some spoken word as well as music, and performing with Little City Big Sound, who was also performing. And I discovered that evening that she is the current poet laureate for Howe Sound Secondary School. So I asked if she would come and tell us a bit about what she does in that role, and maybe share some of her work with us. So please, Ms. Gill.
Thank you. Hello, I am Lucy Gill. I am a grade 12 student at Howe Sound Secondary School, and I am very engaged in the arts in our school, in our town, and in our community. I study instruments and voice at the Squamish Academy of Music, and I also teach there as well. And next year I will be going to Lauriate University for voice performance. So a lot of my time is very dedicated to music and performance. And I'm also a poet, and I am the Poet Laureate this year for Howe Sound Secondary School. And so what that role means is that I was selected by the English faculty at my school to encourage and facilitate poetry in my school community. And so some ways I do this, and I think every poet laureate does this differently, but some ways I have done this would be composing and performing different poems for school events and assemblies that we have. And I try to write one for every month and then perform them at some point. And chairing the school poetry club, which hosts different events throughout the year and contests and things like that. And today I thought I could share one of the poems that I wrote for my role as Poet Laureate. It was the first poem I wrote for this school year. I performed it at the back to school assemblies, and it's just sort of a reflection on the past 2 years, and I dedicated it to the students in my grade and how our experience has been. So if it's all right, I thought I could share that now. All right. We have walked through a world painted in murky hues of yet to come and still unknown and breaking news, and we have consumed loss like coffee, a bitter brew that keeps us awake, an unshakable weight, a backpack we've carried through tumultuous days. I've witnessed how tensions can shatter the world as I know it, and as divisions grow, it seems impossible to find one's footing on these shifting grounds, while beneath the surface we have found and unearthed terrible truths. We have watched hate inspire violence, birth revolution, force change, and I've learned that sometimes change means more than repairing the past. It means creating something new. Isn't that all we know these days? New, in these unprecedented times, where we've had to learn again how to live day to day. I know now that I'll never run out of poems to write or things to say, because unfamiliar vocabulary keeps finding its way onto my tongue. More and more, I find myself turning towards poetry just to keep my head above water and my eyes turning forward. I keep my future clutched between my fingers in the dulled point of a pencil. My temple is blank notebook pages. I find something sacred in the words I have yet to say. It's hard to have faith in what I can't perceive, but still, I believe in my future. Not that my path will be easy or straight, or that every quote from my story will be great, or that I'll always be right, but in the future I intend to write. I will always try to right my wrongs and repair what I hurt with the love I create. Yes, we've seen hard times, but our futures are still unwritten, and as long as we carry on, our hope can never be extinguished. So I'm trying to find the poetry in life. I encourage you to try it too. And as we move forward in our journeys and into a new year of school, find the people, the places, the pastimes that help you see your future with more than just acceptance, with passion. Move forward in this fashion and remember that your teachers, your peers, and your entire community believe in your future too.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That is a great way to start our first meeting of the year. And
Thank you.
I'll just open up the floor in case any other counselors wish to make any remarks.
Yeah, it's hard to follow that. I think the mayor kind of took the words I had. It's what a perfect way to start the new year. There's a lot of challenges we're facing already, but it's such optimistic words in the face of everything we are faced with. And I think those words are applicable to, I hear them as applicable much more to just a grade 12 class. They really seem to speak to our whole time, and just hearing words like that, and when other people express them that way, it just makes me feel good, feel a lot of hope and optimism. And thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Gill. I have the privilege of chairing the Squamish Youth Council right now, and it is young people such as yourself and those on the Youth Council that are really creating a voice and showing that what youth have to say, how they're feeling, how they experience the world really, really, really matters a lot, and that the adults in our community need to be listening. And so I appreciate you capturing the challenges for young people over the last 2 years and also their resiliency, because I think that's something that we've observed in our community is the resiliency of youth to find a way to move forward and be hopeful. So thank you for being with us this evening and sharing, and we wish you so much success in your role as Poet Laureate this year, and love to have you back if you want to finish off the year as well.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right. Wonderful. Have a good evening.
Bye.
All right. Moving on, we're on item 5, consideration of unscheduled public attendance. If there's anyone online that feels they have an issue that council needs to hear about before the next meeting in 2 weeks, this is your opportunity to raise your hand. Seeing none, we do not have any public hearings this evening or scheduled timed items. So we're on to item 8, bylaws, first 3 readings of the District of Squamish payment in lieu of off-street parking spaces. This is amendment bylaw number 2872, 2021. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Buxton.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I'll just bring up my PowerPoint presentation and be very brief. It will be brief once. There we go. Okay, so bylaw 2872 deals with cash in lieu of parking. Sorry. It will let me advance the slides. There we go. The recommendation tonight is that the commercial cash in lieu parking rate be increased from the current 25,000 to 30,000 per eligible commercial parking stall. Now, just in terms of some very brief background as to the applicability of this provision, it's not community-wide. It is limited to the downtown area and commercial parking stalls for between currently 4 and 7 potential commercial parking stalls. So It's not dealing with a particularly large number of parking stalls in any particular application, but it is still fairly meaningful. In terms of a little policy background, this first came to light sort of in recent times in 2017 and 2018 with Bylaw 2553, where the amount per parking stall was increased to 15,000. I believe at that point it was at 6,000, but it increased to 15,000. And then in and around the same time, we'd done a downtown parkade study, which provided some more information. And at that point in time, council gave us some direction to increase it to 25,000, where it currently stands, and work towards looking at regional compatibility and pay parking in the downtown. So Bylaw 2837 did increase that amount in 2021 to $25,000. That was a little tardy in getting started, but it was done. And then since then, we've been working on the current information, and there is currently $630,000 in the off-street parking reserve fund. So there's not a huge amount in that reserve fund at the present time. Some background information on that downtown parkade study in 2019. The construction costs ranged, but topped out at $65,000 per stall for I think it was a 200 stall multi-story parking structure. That's of course 100% of construction costs. We've been discussing this issue over the last few months with Development Liaison Committee and a number of developers that we have that typically end up paying these amounts or are eligible to pay these amounts. What those discussions and conversations have revealed is that the current 25,000 is an attractive financial amount for developers, and that there's really probably a sweet spot around the $30,000 per stall rate. When you get to numbers above that level, it's not 30,000 and it suddenly changes, but somewhere in the $30,000 to $35,000 range, that sweet spot shifts, and what we will tend to see is that developers, in response to amounts that are unattractive, are capping or holding the amount of commercial space, substitution with additional residential space, multiple levels of parking that consume residential and commercial floor space, all of which aren't particularly where we would like to push development to go. So at some point above that 30,000 range, you end up with what I would call potentially perverse incentives that result from that amount. And if you reach a certain point, then there simply will be no uptake from the development community to take cash in lieu. They would simply either execute on those avoidance policies or just not avoid the issue entirely, or build their own parking. Sorry, wrong way. We did look at regional rates, and those vary widely across the community. The averages in the region is 26,000. The average provincially is a few $1,000s lower. So a lot of them are in this 20 to 30, 35,000 range. A few go above that $35,000 range. Where we're heading in 2022 with parking issues, one of which is tonight is hopefully to amend the cash in lieu rate. Following that, we do have budget approval for a parking utilization study that will repeat the work that was done in 2016, 2017 to look at what's the current utilization of on-street parking in the downtown area. And we've also got budget dollars for a downtown paid parking program plan. So how can we start to roll that paid parking program out in the downtown area? It'll consider technology options and various strategies and plans we could use to effect paid parking. But it will take some time. Nobody does that in 6 months or a year. It does take some time to roll that out. So the recommendation tonight is that we give first, second, and third reading to Bylaw 2872, and that essentially revises the amount from 25,000 up to 30,000, which is about 50% of potential construction costs. But I say if we if we edge higher than that, we may not get the revenue, and we may see development that's not in the direction that we would like to see. That's the summary of the issues and the recommendation. If council has any questions, I can certainly try and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton. Council, are there any questions? Council French, then Council Anderson.
Thanks, Mayor. I found it interesting that Coquitlam is demanding $40,000 and just a few kilometers away, Burnaby's requiring $25,000 as a payment. So I'm just wondering if staff could share a little bit about the context beyond what we heard in the presentation and see in the report to council on that wide range of varying amounts across Metro Vancouver, and then how that influences our context here.
Through the mayor, we didn't do any research to try and find out why those amounts were set, so I wouldn't be able to give you any information on that. And sorry, your second question was
Just how that the context applies for here.
Yeah, sorry. It was simply, we were simply providing them as is our number radically different from everybody else's? Are we picking 75,000 and everybody's at 30,000, or are we somewhat in the ballpark? And I think at $30,000, we're not the lowest. We're certainly not the lowest, but we're not the highest either. So we're somewhere in the middle of the regional range. So.
Great, thanks. My second question was answered in that, so thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. My question, Mr. Buxton, will be regarding engagement with developers that you've referred to. But I'll first just cite from my files on past correspondence we've received on parking from the community. We have heard from some property developers that the impacts for small lot development versus larger lot are significant, the differences between the two situations. In fact, we've received the suggestion that, and I'll quote, to increase the cash in lieu cost for all lot sizes instead of biasing the larger developments would further hamper the viability of small lot development. And we're referring, of course, to the downtown. So my question is, you've cited conversations with the developers, including, as you've just related, conversations with recent developers who have recently been paying these fee in lieu fees. How might you characterize their circumstances as regards, are they small lot downtown developers or larger lot developers? And is that a consideration we should be taking into account as we move forward, and even here as we discuss this present proposal?
The developers that we spoke to would be on the larger range, that certainly not independent small lot 20 or 50 foot frontages. And they would be looking at developing much larger properties. Having said that, if you get down to the very small frontage properties, there's very little you can do with the parking anyway. On a 25-foot frontage, you can squeeze two, or we've seen one of them, you can squeeze 2 or 3 parking stalls on a development of that nature. If that's $30,000 or $40,000 a stall, I don't think that's going to make a significant difference to the pro forma of a project of that scale. It's not going to be a significant percentage of their overall development budget if you're redeveloping an entirely, so starting with a 25 or 50 foot lot and starting from the ground up. The parking just isn't going to be a significant enough component of your overall development costs to sway you one way or the other. So setting a differential rate based on lot size, I don't think would achieve a great deal.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton.
Councillor Fort, and then Councillor Race.
Thank you. I appreciate the rationale around the rates, and I was excited when I first this was first presented to us, I guess, in 2020 about getting to that 65 rate. But you know, as we work through this, I I'm comfortable where we've landed, and I appreciate the that chart that showed where we sat in relation to our sort of nearest neighbors. But as I got through that, I started thinking about the map. And is it possible to put it up there? Because that's a piece of this I just hadn't considered before. So with this, there's some significant developments that are happening to the south and to the east of this. And the context isn't dissimilar, or they aspire to be similar. Are similar regulations baked into their land development agreements, and that's why they're excluded from the map? Or is there some benefit in looking at, even if we adopted this today, looking at where these lines, or where it applies to, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
That would be a zoning bylaw amendment, so we could take that on as a separate, it would be a separate issue. To the best of my recollection, no, I don't believe any of the land development agreements with those major developments to the east, which is primarily residential, so the cash in lieu wouldn't apply to that anyway. And to the south, I'm 99% certain, given that it froze the zoning bylaw in place through the phase development agreement, that there are no cash in lieu of parking provisions to the areas to the south. That doesn't mean those couldn't be created by an amendment to the zoning bylaw. We could do that with respect to the lands to the east or the north or the west, but not to the south, because that's subject to a phase development agreement. That would require a negotiated solution with that developer. But anything is possible in terms of moving that red polygon to be a different shape size, if council so wished. So that would be a larger project outside of simply looking at the cash amount, but it's possible, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that context. I'll give that some consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Race.
Thank you. I'm just curious whether the things we have coming up, the utilization study and the paid parking study, are going to give us recommendations, or are they just going to say this is what it is, as opposed to giving us solutions?
The utilization study will simply give us information on how effectively or how intensely the existing parking stock is used. So it's an information item. It's done essentially as sort of a red flag in terms of when you get to certain percentage utilization rates, you need more parking. And we weren't there with the last study. We may be closer, we may be there on a new study. So that will be information. I'm intending that the paid parking program give us some recommendations about how to proceed. There are numbers of options that have appeared, numbers of strategies and new technology that's appeared that we may, frankly, staff here may not be aware of them. So it may give us some ideas and recommendations about how to proceed and give us a phased approach as to how to do that.
All right, so I don't see any further questions. Staff have proposed that the cash in lieu be raised from 25 to 30,000. That's being moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Race. Any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Herford, then Race, then Pett and Gill, and then I'll come to this side of the table.
Thank you. I think this is an appropriate rate. Back until March 2020, the rate was $15,000, which I think we can all agree is low, and I'm happy with where we landed here at the $30,000, and it does represent roughly half the construction cost of a parking facility at some future date. So those numbers make me feel far more comfortable than where we were when we started this down this path in 2020. So thank you very much for the work on it, and I'll be supporting.
Councillor Race.
Thank you. I'm also supporting this. And I think it is an appropriate number. And I suppose it's tempting to say, well, we should get more, and it costs $65,000 to build one. But for me, that number is entirely dependent on the retail value of the development after it's built. And even though our prices are rising around Squamish, they are nowhere near what they are in the city of Vancouver, which I think is how Vancouver can afford to, and developers can afford to pay those numbers because what they produce and what they sell is intrinsically more valuable than what would come out of Squamish. But obviously, you know, at $30,000 a stall and it takes $65,000 to build one, apparently, this is not the solution. And the reason I asked my question earlier is really, I think that it's something that we keep putting off and we study it and so forth, but we're getting more and more complaints from the community and businesses. It is an issue that's not going to go away. Even electric cars need a place to park sometimes. And so I think it is something that we're going to have to deal with. And whether there's something other than building a parking structure, I don't know. Whether there's other sources apart from tax funds to do that, developer contributions, for example, above and beyond this, I don't know. But I think it's something that's on the horizon for us at some point, and perhaps these two studies will flesh that out. Thank you.
Councillor Pettengill, and then I'll come over to Councillor Anderson and Councillor French.
Yes, thank you. This is a bit of an interesting one. I think I'm fundamentally against the idea of putting any public funding towards parking, which would push me towards a higher rate on the surface. But I think stepping back a little further, it's clear from the complaints we get and everything we see that if we want to focus on livability, equity, affordability, safety, wellness, and the climate crisis, which I think are important to everyone and mirror some of the complaints we get, I think more cars, regardless of who's paying to support them, doesn't make sense. So we have to start shifting our city design away from more cars. And this alone won't solve this, whether we put this higher or lower. So I'm sort of seeing this as one piece, which one sort of lever we're moving a little bit, but I'm looking forward to those other two work products we'll see this year. And I think we'll need to look at these pieces all together to get to the solution we need. And so having said that, I'm fine to proceed with this where it is now, because it does mean, in theory, a little less public funding towards parking. But I think there's some more work to do, and I look forward to seeing the rest of that work. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. Three comments. First of all, I'll cite from the report to council multiple levels of parking which would consume both residential and commercial floor building space, which is counter to the directions that the district would like to see downtown development proceeding. When I read that leapt off the page for me as a fairly loaded statement, and I won't assume where it comes from. Presumably, this is the record of the meetings with our development community stakeholders. However, that is a loaded statement, and we should recognize that this will be an ongoing conversations. There will be ongoing conversations around both symptoms and solutions and visions for the future of downtown, and it's not going to be simple. And I've already referred to small lot developers versus larger developers, development projects with differing circumstances. So it's a mixed picture, and we need to, it will be an involving an important conversation going forward. Secondly, there is in the report to council a reference to our outcome of the March 17, 2020 meeting, and it refers to, in the final bullet, staff to explore pay parking in the downtown. And of course, we are undertaking that, an initiative in the coming year. However, what I saw missing is that I believe when we passed our motion, and this we refer to options 1 and 7 here, but one of those options also referred to other work that we could be doing as interim measures. And I didn't see reference to that. There's no biggie here, but we should keep in mind, and this may be addressed in the parking utilization study, that there's things we can do and look at, including, and I'll cite from the minutes from March 20 of last year, parking configuration modifications should also be considered. And even an example right across the street, there's 2 or 3 parking spots right across from the library that are not usable because nobody's changed the paint color on the curb. The building's gone, and since the garden's been put in, but we still can't park there. and there's no good reason for that. So if you look around town, maybe there are a variety of interim measures we can pursue and have a look at. Thirdly, Mr. Buxton's referred to new technology, and this should be welcome that we review this. One of the new technologies is in parkade design and construction. Mass timber, for example, parkades can be repurposed, and there's many examples around the world of this, new in different continents around the world, and I passed on a report on this to council and staff last year. So parkades, parking facilities can be repurposed to other uses, and this should be an exciting prospect in opening up some options for flexibility as we make plans for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. And speaking in favor of the motion, this increase is justified in my mind. As tempting as it is to push the amount up higher than $30,000, I think the amount is appropriate for us at this point. And this bylaw is just one piece of a larger puzzle, an important piece. And future pay parking on downtown streets is definitely part of that bigger picture, as we heard. And I truly believe there's no such thing as free parking, and an appropriate price tag on all forms of parking is what we need. So I'll be voting in favor of the motion.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Buxton. We're on to item 8B1. We have a number of bylaws that we need to adopt this evening. First up is the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw, Amendment Bylaw for the Wildfire Development Permit Area 2809-2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Herford, second by Councillor French. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, District of Squamish Land Development Procedures Bylaw, Amendment Bylaw number 2825-2021. Moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Pettengill. Any comments on this? Seeing none. Any opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish Wildfire Landscaping Management Bylaw number 2834-2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Herford. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw for Wildfire Landscaping number 2865-2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw Amendment Bylaw related to wildfire landscaping number 2866-2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on to item 9A1, staff reports, appointment of election officers for the 2022 general local government election. Is there any staff comments on this? Yes, go ahead, Ms. Arthurs.
I don't have a presentation on it, but I just wanted to say Happy New Year, Council. And I'm Robin Arthurs, General Manager of Corporate Services. I'm here today to seek the appointments for the election officers for the 2022 general election. As Council may be aware, the election will be held the third Saturday in October, which is October 15th, and established in the Local Government Act. And these appointments are also necessary in the Local Government Act, Section 58. And if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions, Council? All right, seeing none, that's moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor French. Any comments? It's nice to see another Deputy Chief Election Officer. So thank you for that. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Arthurs.
Thank you.
The 15th of October will be here before we know it. All right, we're on to item 10, consent agenda. So anything in the consent agenda, Council, that you would like to speak to or pull or are in conflict with, now is the time to do that. Councillor Pettengill.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull the staff update, the CAO appointment to the Provincial Board of Examiners.
Anything else? All right. Seeing none, I will move the consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Race. Any opposed? Motion carries. There are no late agenda items this evening. And Councilor Pettengill, I think we'll deal with your item under 13, even though it's not technically correspondence, but it can be disguised as such. All right, so under correspondence action requested, that correspondence from Jay Summers be referred to the Director of Engineering for investigation and response. This is the pedestrian crossing on Tantalus Road, moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Herford. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. The District of Lillooet regarding BC wildfires petition. This is for Council's consideration this evening. Councilor Anderson.
Mayor Elliott, I'd like to move that this item of correspondence be received. And I will speak to that recommendation and that I'm not making another if I have a seconder.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councilor French. Go ahead, Councilor Anderson.
Yes, there's a number of very topical subjects addressed in this letter. In fact, my observation is there's maybe too many. Large-scale observation on forest management across the country and on natural hazards management. And I feel that the recommendation or the recommended resolution, if you like, the petition, is too broad in scope to be practical for us to engage in or to be advisable for us to engage in. If the recommendation from the district or village of Lillooet would have been, say, limited to an all hazards agency or limited to some aspect of forest management, but I feel it's a little bit broad for us to take an active response to this item. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Pettengill.
Yeah, I think, might be one we consider working with Lillooet or maybe through the SLRD on for UBCM is the thought that comes to my mind. I noted in the list of people for inclusion, conservationists and scientists and so on were missing from the list from my perspective. So if we were to support this, I would want to amend it myself. And so I think it maybe makes sense to think about this for UBCM with a little more thought about how we would like to see it.
Councilor Race.
Thank you. I'll support this. I have to admit, when I first read this in the report, my thought was that it's something worthy of support. But I tend to agree with Councilor Anderson in the sense that it is kind of a shotgun approach, and I think we might be better served by, and perhaps through the regional district board, cooperating with Lillooet in something that's just a little bit more focused and deals with some of these things. I mean, certainly I think the goal is well intentioned, but I think perhaps this isn't quite the way.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I support the intent of what's tried to be achieved through this petition and the motion, but I'm not sure that it squares with being really focused on either of those two topics or doing them justice. So I think it is the right thing to receive, and then myself and Councillor Pettengill or Councillor Stoner, when she returns, can use the opportunity when this letter is on the SLRD agenda to discuss this with Lillooet more fulsomely. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then finally, 12A3, Squamish Arts Council is seeking a letter of support for the British Columbia Council's project assistance for an arts infrastructure program grant. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by, that is a letter of support. Yeah, seconded by Councillor Race. You're good with that? All right, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. The Squamish Arts Council does great work, and any opportunity for them to collect additional grant money, I think we should support. And this looks very worthy of support. So I'm looking forward to having the letter sent and some positive results coming from it.
Anyone else? Seeing none, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Councillor Pangel, you pulled the CAO appointment to the BC Provincial Board of Examiners.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to highlight how involved I've mentioned it before. Our municipality punches above its weight provincially and I think even nationally when I see the participation of our mayor and other councillors and our staff at various conferences. Before Christmas, we saw a presentation about international mentoring that our CAO and others on our team are doing through the FCM. And I think this is just another example of how our staff and our leadership is just participating well beyond our community, which has benefits for our community. I think other communities learn from us, and I think it sets us up where the province listens to us because they know there's a lot of just great intelligence and understanding and capacity in our community. And so I just wanted to thank our CAO for applying and participating in this and just recognize some of the stuff that's going on here and that our team pulls off. So thank you.
Yeah, congratulations to CAO Glende on her appointment. It's great news. You want a motion to receive? Seconded by Councillor Herford. Any other comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Council, any business arising from the minutes? We have no items under items 16, 17, 18. Is there anyone online, Harley, that for open question period? No. Okay. Any council or staff announcements? Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'd just like to show my appreciation for our public works crews that have been working, starting this new year, going full out with this. I'm going to call it unprecedented amount of snow in my memory, anyways. And it's interesting to see there as I move around the town, seeing where they pop up with the snow blowers and their trail machines and all the different apparatus that they've deployed. And I know as the snow piles up, it's not getting any easier. So a big shout out to them, and I know they're probably out there working right now. So anyways, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just a reminder, folks, that the Eagle count was delayed from this weekend until next weekend on the 9th. So if you want to volunteer, you can still do that. And I just want to thank Chamber, Tourism Squamish, Downtown BAA, and our local businesses for making the community look so bright and festive over the holiday period. It looked really cool with all the snow too. So thank you for their efforts, making our community look beautiful. With that, motion to close. Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Race. And we will recess now for 10 minutes. Oh, right. Any opposed? Motion carries. And we'll recess now for 10 minutes and come back on the other link.